All right, it is 10 o'clock, so I will get us started on our November meeting of WKU Staff Senate with the call of the roll. Senator Basham, present. Regent Brinkley, present. Senator Campbell here. Senator Kanzler, present. Senator Cato,
present.
Senator Crow,
Present.
Senator Foster, Senator Gilbert, present. Senator Hopwood, yes, sir. Senator Inglis could not be with us this morning, but it was good news. She's moving up in position, I heard. So congratulations to her. Senator Johnson, present. Senator Jones, present. Senator Moran,
Present.
Senator Pritchard,
Present.
Senator Purdy, I believe that she is out this week. Senator Roberson, present. Senator Salmon,
Present.
Senator Chargorodsky, Senator Thomas. I know that Senator Vanderpool could not be with us today. Senator Vincent, present. And Senator Waller,
Present.
All right, next on our agenda is the approval of the agenda for today's meeting. I'd like to accept that by unanimous consent if there are no objections. Hearing none, we'll consider that to be accepted. Next, we'll move on to approval of the prior monthly meeting minutes. Likewise, I'd like to accept that by unanimous consent unless there are any objections. Wonderful. So next on our agenda is the Christopher Ware Staff Star Award. So I will turn it over to Senator Vincent.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very honored to say that we have three wonderful staff members that we'll be honoring today. The first one would be Laura King. She is the admissions counselor at the McCurran Honors College. Speaking on her behalf is the assistant director for enrollment and brand management of the Honors College, Zach Riley.
Thank you all so much. So I'll go ahead and read the nomination. Since being hired, Gloria's played a key part in the McCurran Honors College. Her demeanor, approach, and professionalism with prospective students and their families is truly unmatched. While being on the road and recruiting is a large part of her job, she also does an incredible job as the primary advisor for our Honors Toppers organization. Additionally, Laura played a monumental role in the success of our H4 this year, which is our Honors First Year Orientation Retreat. H4 takes place annually prior to anything else on campus starting. Laura led the 3-day training of our student counselors, which is no small feat in and of itself. The counselors were better prepared than they've been in my time here at the McCurran Honors College, and it showed with our best H4 to date. Laura embodies the spirit makes the master, which is why I recommended her for this role. Congratulations, Laura.
Okay, our next staff member being recognized is Brittany Green. Brittany is a purchasing agent in the Office of Strategy, Operations, and Finance. I will go ahead and read her nomination that was submitted, and then I have her supervisor, Marcy, coming to say a few words about it. Recently, to replace an aging departmental vehicle, we decided to surplus a vehicle that was beyond its useful life and budgeted to pursue a leased vehicle. Brittany was alerted in the process and the lease was mentioned and proactively reached out to inquire about our plans and offer her assistance. After lots of different avenues to provide a gift in kind did not come to be, I reached out to Brittany to seek her assistance with one of the more complex purchasing processes, a vehicle lease. Within one business day, Brittany had worked to provide information and guidance on the process so that a decision could be made. Her customer service throughout the process was outstanding. She stayed in touch to keep me informed of the status of the order and walked me through each step needed to receive and operate a leased vehicle. To me, Brittany exemplified a level of excellence in service that far exceeds expectations through great communication and guidance for someone who is not a specialist on those requirements of the purchasing process and all related processes, including insurance, tags, fuel, maintenance. Also speaking, Marcy, please feel free to come up.
I'm truly blessed to work with Brittany every day. I'm emotional, I can't help it. It's rare to come across people who are dedicated to their work, trustworthy, and a complete joy to work with. Brittany exhibits all these traits, and our efforts have not gone unnoticed. I admire her work ethic, her involvement in the campus community, and all of these traits are commendable and contagious. Brittany is always the first to volunteer to plan a party, or grab a gift, or make someone's day brighter or better. In that sense, she is our go-to party planner in the office. While it might sound silly in respects to party planning, her skills at organizing, collecting money for gifts, and planning a party theme are just an extension of those natural abilities. And she portrays in her daily work. She's very thoughtful and wants her coworkers to know they're cared about. Brittany strives to ensure that WKU is getting the best possible deal and benefits from each bid and RFP. With presenting with a range of options, Brittany seeks out the advice of myself and our boss, Dr. Jennifer, to this. I remember one situation, we needed to buy laptops so that we could work more efficiently at work and when we had to work at home because of childcare issues. The current model we wanted was out of stock because of supply chain issues, which we've all dealt with. And Brittany was so concerned about the increase in price that we had to convince her, despite the extra cost, it was necessary, even though it was our budget and we had the money. She truly has the best interests of the university and the community at heart. She is our little indie picture. Finally, it's a joy personally to call Brittany a friend. We spent a lot of time looking for PPE. And we spent a lot of time during the pandemic on FaceTime as we were trying to homeschool and work. We were in the trenches and trying to find things. We generally spend more waking hours at work with our coworkers than we do with our own families. And Brittany has helped create a loving work family at WKU. That's right. Can't get emotional. Brittany Green, I appreciate your hard work, your laughter, your dedication to work, and so much more. Your efforts are much appreciated, and you work tirelessly each day to make WKU a better place. And I love you. Well done, my little party planning team.
Okay, our final physical warrior staff star award goes to Kent Johnson. Kent is the Director of Military Student Services in the College of Education and Computer Science. I've had the privilege of working with Kent over the years on many different projects. Appreciate that. Kent is more than deserving of this award. He goes above and beyond to help students, strives to support military connected students to help them succeed at WKU, and is constantly thinking of ways to improve processes to make sure WKU continues to be a military-friendly institution. Military-connected students often face unique sets of circumstances. Kent makes sure there is a support system in place for these students. Kent was actually nominated by a current military student. This is the first time we've actually had a student that has nominated a staff member, and coming from a student service area, it just was like heartwarming that, you know, the student took the time and reached out and nominated Kent. When we created this award, we wanted to find a way to show a small token of our appreciation for all the great work that is done around campus. Knowing that a student took the time to recognize the work being done by Kent brings a smile to my face. I'm going to go ahead and read the nomination that the student submitted. Kent has been nothing less than outstanding in his service to improving my academic experience at WKU. He has been extremely diligent in assisting me when making me feel welcome at the university, attaining tuition assistance, registering for classes, setting me up for academic success in those courses, and connecting me with other military resources. Though all of my classes are online, I decided to make the hour-and-a-half drive over to campus in Bowling Green to meet with him more than once already. And he has been fantastic to work with in aiding my education. So thank you, Maximilian Hess, for nominating Kent, and also speaking on his behalf is the Associate Dean for the College of Education and Behavioral Social Sciences, Dr. Dennis George.
Well, thank you all this morning. For any of you who have had responsibility for bringing someone into an organization, for hiring them and bringing them in and making them part of the organization, you know that even with the most diligent searches and interview experiences, there's still an element of risk, because you never know if you're really going to get the right person. Well, as one who had the privilege of bringing Kent on board at WKU as a student worker in 2011, and then seeing him become a part-time and then a full-time employee in military student services, and now the director of that unit, it was very obvious from the beginning that Kent was special. And the reason that I think all these good things are said about him, well, there are many reasons, but I think one in particular is that he really connects with veterans, because he has the kind of credibility to do this job that most people wouldn't have. I'm a veteran, but I certainly wouldn't have that kind of credibility. One, because I'm an old man, but also because when it comes to a lot of our veterans are combat veterans, and a lot of their anxiety with respect to school and just people in general stem from those experiences. And I certainly can't relate. The only conflict I had in my years in the Navy was with paperwork. But Kent, as a combat Marine, he's been there. He knows what it's like to be on the ground in combat situations in Iraq and so forth. And I think that there's just this vibe that comes from him that lets people know how much that he understands, and he's sympathetic to their situation. He works so hard, and as already been said, he is so student centric and so veteran and as well as active duty military centric. He is just the perfect person for this role, and I'm not at all surprised that students are not stepping up and sharing that and nominating you for this award. So I'm just delighted, and I'm honored to still, even though we've both changed colleges since that time, I've changed twice now since that time. But we both now have the opportunity to work together again, and that's a great honor for me. So, Kent, congratulations.
Thank you all. Thank you all, and don't forget, if you have any staff members that you would like to nominate, please go to our website and submit that nomination. Thank you all.
One more round of applause for all of our staff. Next, we will move into officer committee and staff regent reports. We'll begin with Regent Brinkley.
Thank you. I am pulling mine up right now. I apologize. Emailed it to Julia. Pull it back up here. But I want to start in a different way. I want to take a few moments to recognize our colleague Dennis Kane, who passed away recently. Joined WKU when the parking and transportation service was in its infancy 17 years ago. And as part of that leadership team, he helped shape the department in many programs. First, he was a data analyst, and later as manager. He was also the representative face of PTS during top sessions. And his presentations were perennial favorites among parents. he will be sorely missed. Please continue to keep his family in your prayers. And I would like to observe a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you. The Regents Committee met on October 21st. We had committee meetings. Those are different than full board meetings because the committees vote, not the full board. So when there are action items that are appropriate, they are brought up to committee for approval and they will pass to the full board in December for secondary full approval. On the academic affairs side, there were 5 approved emeritus appointments for faculty, and that was a standard action. There's no budgetary implications, and I'm not on that committee, so I didn't vote either way. On the finance and budget side, we had a standard list, and I am on this committee of personnel actions. A budget versus actual report for the quarter that had preceded. And then for the third time, we approved a $10 million line of credit with Truist Bank. There's a lot of discussion when this line of credit is mentioned. It's something we've done for 3 years now as an approval process on the board. It's not something the university historically had, but 3 years ago, and I'll never forget when Susan said this because it made an impression. You don't try to get a line of credit when you need it, you try to get it done. So that was initiated and we didn't. It has not been used. It's since we've had it approved and we don't anticipate that we'll need it, but it's a yearly process regardless. And it's a good safety net if there's an emergency one-time expense that just comes out of nowhere. And those can happen sometimes. And that was all for finance and budget. On the student affairs side, there were no action items. We did have a great, very informative presentation about the Hilltopper Organization of Latin American Students. If you don't know anything about that organization, and I did not, I think it's an outstanding group of young people who are going to be leaders in our communities. And if you have time to volunteer or support their efforts, I'm sure some of you already are, but if you have an opportunity to contribute to them in any way or form, I highly recommend it. They're just outstanding future leaders. The executive committee then approved 2 addendums to the athletic employment contracts for the men's and women's basketball coaches. And the way that I would describe these is they are not salary increases, they are incentive. So you get to a tournament, you get a flat fee. You stay another year, you get a flat fee. Those are just added incentives. They're not salary. It's I would call them performance and retention based incentives. The executive committee approved that with no dissent. There were some information items to the executive committee. Conference USA. Apparently, we're going to add Kennesaw State into the Conference USA, and they get 41,000 undergraduate students. It's a pretty large university. There was a presentation about Buddy Steen on the innovation campus that I thought was very important. Some of the things going on there are incredible. I would take a look if you have any interest. And there was a pretty light but informative presentation by Dr. Tamala Smith on buildings on campus that are haunted. Or should be, right? That terrified me to no end. It made me think of something that happens on Transit's campus, which I'm going to take an executive moment here and describe. On Transit's campus in their old administration building, there is a crypt where they have 2 people entombed, and every year they have a contest. 2 students on Halloween spend the night, and they sleep on the areas where people are buried. You can find that on WKU at FM. Good story this year on the local the DRG in Lexington. I couldn't believe it. I've got a friend that's a vice president there, and she told me about this and it terrified me. So I'm not recommending that we do that here on this campus. We don't have But if there is some fun Halloween thing like that, I would recommend. All right, that's it. That's my report. Thank you all very much.
Communications, Senator Benson.
Yes, the communications committee met on Monday and discussed some various topics. One of the topics being the book scholarship for staff members. That application is now available on our website. We were looking at possibly changing the application deadline for the semester so that the awards can be given to individuals 2 weeks prior to the start of the semester. One thing to remember is those awards are good for a year. So if you would like to fill out the application, go ahead. The staff assistant awards a $50 scholarship and is matched by Barnes and Noble, totaling a $100 scholarship. If staff members are interested in donating to the scholarship, you can go online to our website, contact one of our senators, or you can also do payroll deduction. And don't forget that Staff Senate does have a Facebook page, a Twitter account, and a YouTube channel if y'all would like to subscribe.
Senator Purdy for treasurer, I mean, she couldn't be with us. Was the report shared by anyone? All right, we will look for her report and include it in next month's minutes for approval. Technology, Senator Gilbert.
I'll report this time. Secretary, Senator Johnson.
Vice Chair, Senator Bash.
Good morning. So the focus of my report is on my service on the Budget Executive Committee. We canceled one of our meetings in late October to allow our subcommittees more time to work. My subcommittee and the other subcommittee weren't quite ready to present, and that time was much appreciated and used to prepare for our meeting that we held yesterday. The other subcommittee was working on processes for people to submit for requests for the next budget year. The structure of those, I think, is much improved for anybody that submitted last year. Jeppy and Dean Brown's group have done quite a bit. Dean Terrence Brown's group, since there are two, you got to clarify, have done quite a bit to streamline the process. So I hope that makes the effort a lot simpler on people this year. My ad hoc committee was focused on making a recommendation related to one-time payments for faculty and staff. We presented an option, a recommendation, and that was the BC voted not to accept the recommendation. So that is the status of one-time payments from that ad hoc committee. BC still has a series of meetings scheduled and a lot left on the slate for the rest of the year into January and March for the work that we'll do for the upcoming FY. Any questions? Briefly.
Thank you. Where did the idea for the one-time payments initially come from?
So I think it was on our original calendar of stuff when we started the BEC for this year. I'm not 100% certain on where that portion came from. I know I've been involved as a member of the Senate in multiple conversations about it. I know it was a topic discussed as a possibility one of the Regents meetings that I watched online. I've had outside of the Senate conversations with other members of staff and faculty about it. So I'm not sure exactly the source of, if there is a single source, or if it's, if you look at what other universities have done, maybe it's a best practice type thing, or response to, COVID, inflation, all the things.
Was there data presented to refute why this was a good idea, or was it just I'm just curious as to what caused a no vote, presumably that it was done by several staff members.
It was discussion. There wasn't specific data over the course of, it's a multi-meeting conversation. So there was discussion related to the term I'll use is cash on hand, but the unrestricted funds. And then there were, in our ad hoc committee, there were presentations on that. In our BEC meeting, the full group meeting, it was more conversations about maybe the way people felt about the best way to apply money. I think that's more of, is that fair to say? Or
Yeah, and I'll speak to a couple of questions if you don't mind me
Yeah,
jumping
please.
in a little bit on background as well. So one of the reasons, at least that Jordan and Jason and I were supportive of this was obviously we saw last spring with the staff senate survey that compensation was a primary concern on campus, and part of that was morale, but just also the history of compensation on campus, and we're still working to make good progress on that. But with this year's unprecedented inflation, we were trying to look for a way and trying to seek an option that would alleviate some of that pressure, especially for staff members who may be on the lower end of the pay scales at WKU, where a one-time payment like this would have the greatest impact and help mitigate the inflation they may have experienced over the last year. There was also a little bit of a basis for us to go off of on actions that were taken at University of Kentucky and University of Louisville. University of Kentucky had in 2021 taken action on a one-time $1,000 payment, and it was prorated by full-time equivalent status. And then University of Louisville this year had announced a $1,000 bonus for employees. And so we were looking to do something similar if there was the possibility in the budget to do so. I think that everyone recognizes inflation as something that's in the news there. So again, we were hoping that we might be able to take some action here in addition. And this would be, of course, would have been separate from the 2% salary pool increase that everyone will be seeing in January that has been officially approved, so that those that are eligible will be receiving that. In terms of discussion on what my takeaways were for points that were made against the potential for a one-time payment like this one, was essentially concern about budget and the impact on budget in future years, and pulling from that cash on hand, depending on where enrollment falls, if we don't see enrollment increases in the future, and those budget dollars potentially being needed for those future budget years. So that was the primary takeaways from the other side of individuals who spoke against this type of effort. So it was certainly not the outcome that we had hoped for. We were really hoping that we would be able to, that this might be a boost to some staff members on campus after several years. We had mentioned earlier this meeting about those trying times with COVID and obviously what we've experienced this year. So we were hoping for a different outcome, but I hope that answers.
It's a beginning to an answer. It's not, in my opinion, I think there was a discussion that was initiated in a board meeting that supported the idea of a one-time payment. What I would look for in the future is if we're going to set an enrollment target and budget to it, maybe we should budget to something we can achieve. Or maybe we should hold people that don't hit that target account. Now that's just a suggestion, but I don't see a reason. And I think the university, and I don't mind saying this publicly, should consider the cost of replacing staff. Because to do a search and to form a committee and to spend that time away from the regular role, I would love to see maybe could we incentivize staff by staying here for more than a year or a year and a half or 2 years? This was a one-time ask. I didn't anticipate that we would ever make this ask again. I believe you all stripped it down in such a way that it was $1,000 and then $500 for benefits eligible part-time employees. Is that correct? Yeah.
ENG funded.
Yeah.
And that's pretty okay. I think that's accurate.
I hope that there is another way that the university can show its support for staff, given the current inflation climate that has continued. And this disappoints me because it was something that I thought was a logical ask. It was a one-time ask. It was not something that should be a budget recurrence, and this one disappoints me.
So,
And I'm disappointed. My point is, I'm disappointed in the committee.
yeah,
I'm not disappointed in university administration because the committee voted it down. So if anybody in the committee that's listening to me would like to email me or call me and explain to me why they voted no, I would be happy to hear that explanation.
to Brian's point, this is something, well, it's something I supported because I think it's a reasonable thing. I support as an individual, but also I'm not on the BEC as an individual. I'm on as a staff senator, and that definitely is our charge. So I think most people that have worked on campus for any time have heard no before, and for very good reason. There are a lot of good reasons for no. But you come to solutions by not taking no and working harder. So I have no doubt that's what we'll do. That's the goal for all things. But in this process, work towards a solution is what we'll continue to do. So any other questions?
Appreciate you all this time.
Go Giants.
All right. For my chair report, Jordan already touched on quite a bit of that from the BEC. So just one other thing I'll say, and on that topic, and if there aren't any other questions, we'll move on. It's just, I think that several of us have joined Staff Senate, those of you in the room that are senators, because feel passionate about working here and creating a climate where people want to work at WKU. And so that is one of the reasons I ran for Senate. And so that work will continue. I hope that in whichever way that you can find a path forward to continue to make WKU a better place to work in your committee work, I just encourage you to keep pressing on in that. And, the spirit of WKU, I think, has a lot to do with its people. And that's one of the things that when we talk to students in recruitment about WKU and what makes it different, oftentimes we talk about the people. It's the faculty and the staff and the students together who make WKU a really unique place to be and a place where people want to be. And so I always want to seek ways to improve that and keep that spirit alive and well. And so we did not find success with this one-time effort, but I know that Jordan, Jason, and I will continue to press in BEC for any opportunities that we can find where we might be able to make progress for employees on the compensation fronts. And I would hope that in subsequent years that will continue. So,
Can I ask you one question?
sure.
Do you think it would be possible that the committee, the members of the BEC, could believe in the university as much as the people in this room do? Because when you talk about, not you, the committee, when they talk about worried about future budget years, that would be a concession to the idea that we're going to have trouble in future years because we don't believe in what we're doing. Now, I think it would be great if that committee would believe in this campus as a whole as much as the people in this room did. That would be my suggestion. It's been nice working with you.
And since that was posed as a question, I do believe, even in our frustration, I do believe that the people in that room care about WKU. I do. So while we may have some struggles ahead, again, I hope that we can just continue to invest in faculty and staff the way that we invest in other resources that we have on campus. I think that's incredibly important. So
I'm looking at the makeup of the committee online, and to me, it leans very heavily on academic affairs side of things. There's two faculty representatives, two faculty senators, there's one staff senator, and then of course the chair, if this is the correct one. I don't see the representation of staff on the ground, and I think that makes a difference. We all know at WKU, there is a breakdown, a perceived breakdown in academic affairs and ESC when it comes to staff, the staff appreciation. And I know that I know we all care about WKU, but I think the voice and the view of staff and what we're struggling with, I can't see that it would have been very much represented on this committee, because a lot of these folks, and I'm not saying that I know all these folks, they're great folks, I'm not saying that, but you're looking at directors, AVPs, associate provosts. These are higher up administrators. That's not where is a staff representative? There's two for faculty, but there's not that representatives for boots on the ground us. And I think that that's a disservice to us as staff members of that committee. I could be wrong, I could be speaking out of turn.
I'll answer for a little bit of it, because last year, it helped adjust the makeup. The list does include both the budget executive committee and the AC. So it's combined for the first time this year, but Amanda Tribune is listed with her title, but she's actually serving as a staff representative. And then Jason Kanzler, I think technically would be the OAC representative. That's combined with the budget executive committee. And then Ryan and I are serving as the staff senate chair. Is an appointed position, and then I'm serving in a role as a staff senator, and that's selected by the Senate. Once I'm chair, it's selected by the Senate. So there technically in this group, there are 4 staff representatives, 3 of those directly for the Senate, and 1 that manages, I think it's a 2-year term that's jointly appointed to the Senate and the chair, the chairs, but from last year.
And
So,
to your point, I believe that something similar was brought up as a point of concern at a faculty senate meeting recently as well about makeup of that body. So I appreciate that feedback, and that's something that we can certainly take to that group and voice that concern about representation. BEC and OAC again combined this year. That is something new with the ramp model. I expect that there will be continuing adjustments to these sorts of committees and their structure. So I appreciate that feedback, and that's something that we can take and voice at our next meeting as a point of concern. So. Yes.
Is it on record who voted no?
I believe it may be in the.
I haven't received minutes.
I have not received the minutes from the meeting.
Yeah. So we did a roll call vote. So I would expect that it.
Are
At least
those
the count.
public? Are those meetings public? I mean, minutes public? Like ours?
I don't know why they wouldn't be. I'm not, although I'm the co-chair of the committee, I'm not technically the one to answer that. But yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't
This
be.
is a good question.
Yeah,
Meetings are closed, they're closed meetings, right?
I believe that's correct.
But the minutes can be.
I think we've kind of discussed there's no reason for it not to be. I don't think they're posted or distributed outside of the shared drive, but if members of the Senate, I guess, would like the
I think that's a fair question and
No,
a
yeah.
fair request, and your questions are perfect. I mean, I'm looking at that list myself and a lot of 6-figure salaries. Yeah. I'm not knocking my colleagues. I appreciate that. But they're not the average us sitting in this room. People.
They're also not the people that have been impacted by visa, where a lot of us are doing the jobs of 2 to 3 people, and that work's not slowing down any. So it's that you can't see from my point of view if you can't walk in my shoes, right? If you're not feeding, if you don't have my experience, and I know we're thinking about the university as a whole, but just as staff Richard said, we have to be losing more money, losing staff than what that losing and recruiting staff. I would like to personally see the financial implications of that. How many that we've lost in the last couple of years. The cost may be associated with recruiting and trying to retain other staff, and the average turnover in terms of like bringing in new staff or the new staff that come in. What's that average turnover? I think that those are all budget items that should be considered.
I would agree with my colleague and say that, just as a comment, when, as a department head, when I look at the cost of replacing an individual, it's not just in the ads that we put out. It's in the time that it takes to craft a position that's needed. If we have to do any administrative reapprovals to modifications based on the evolution of a role, assembling a committee, time that HR spends, albeit their job, they don't know when these are coming in, so they have to prioritize their schedule. I would argue that Andrew Cheryl would agree that they're short-staffed. Then assembling the committee, all of the committee's time, all of the chair's time, and all of the hiring manager's time. And that's part of the real cost, is when we're working on these, that's a real, that it takes away from the other priorities that we all had. And now that we're efficient as a staff, we'll say efficient, that's a fair word, right? And we don't have avenues to spend or other people to fill in the gaps. These costs become more inherent to us because there are also opportunities lost on things that we need to prioritize. So that is a point of concern. You either have to, in my opinion, you either have to figure out a way to pay for the turnover or retain the people here. And that is not something that we vote on in our $370 million budget. But it's a cost that is a fair calculation. Thanks for the floor.
All right. Thank you all. I appreciate the comments. As I said, we will take that feedback with us as we continue to serve on this committee. So I do appreciate that.
Also, too, maybe since the meetings are recorded, maybe the BEC committee could watch this little part of the meeting just to kind of hear some of the different concerns that are out there. I mean, I know y'all will do a great job talking to them, but maybe if they just watch the meeting and hear the concerns, it might be a little bit better. Just let them know they can follow us on YouTube. Hey, we're over 100 subscribers now until we are at there you go.
Yes. Well, in terms of the rest of my report, did have my monthly meeting with the president the Monday of homecoming week. We sat down, and of course, and compensation is always near the top of that list, or at the top of that list. So those conversations continued, and just again, we've spoken to that quite a bit today. So very similar comments there. In terms of, and from mine, very similar comments just on the need for us to continue pressing on compensation matters. We briefly discussed a handful of things that may seem small, but just things to be aware of, and potential things that have been brought to me that we will likely need to discuss within staff senate committees. But there was one instance of an employee I was made aware of who had graduated from WKU, but did have a small debt still owed to the university. But of course, as you know, as an employee, a full-time employee, you have benefits for a tuition waiver. And because that employee had a small debt with WKU and had earned a degree from WKU, that was preventing access to that benefit as an employee. Whereas if that person had graduated from a different institution, not WKU, and they were just wanting to take a course, not as a degree seeking student, that would not have prevented access to that benefit. So that's just one of those things that seems a little out of alignment. And so one I would like to turn out to committee to discuss and see if there is room for adjustment there, or determine who the best people are to have that discussion with. Because again, it shouldn't be a detriment that someone was a graduate of WKU and now is an employee of WKU versus a graduate of another institution. Also, I briefly brought up and in our last meeting, Wade came and spoke about benefits, and I had asked that question because we'd had some concerns raised earlier this semester about fees related to Preston increasing. And I'd asked Wade if we had had discussions ever on there being some sort of benefit or discount tied to that employee wellness program. And I just kind of brought that topic up with the president just as a starting point, not putting a proposal in front of him or anything of that sort, but just mentioning that to him as well, that that's something that again had surfaced as just a benefit of employment that seemed to kind of take a little bit of a step back with an increase in that cost to employees with going to a flat rate and removing that payroll deduction. And so hoping that we can do some work within Senate to explore and have some conversations to see if there's any flexibility in our benefits that might allow some creativity there, and how Preston Center might benefit the health of employees, and also just encourage use of that so that we are a healthier campus that helps us all out. So.
And I mentioned it. I've said negative things. I want to applaud the administration when they do something well. And in this case, they did interject $1.5 million
Yes.
into our benefits package so that we would have no cost increase on health benefits this year. I think that was a great gesture to benefit the staff and the faculty, and I want to recognize them for doing that when they did not have to. There was no gun to their head. They did this to make sure that they fulfilled the idea that they had presented, and I appreciate that. So, and thanks Susan and her staff and the president for doing that to benefit us.
Yes. Also, at the end of the last meeting, I was made aware of just some adjustments that still, last year we had some members of Department of Facilities and Maintenance come and speak, and I believe there were some adjustments made, but just there might be a few lingering structural things there. And so I just made the president aware, and that we were trying to gather more information to determine exactly what issues might still be there and how we might be able to go about solving those. And so we are still gathering some additional information and are going to look into that for them. So on a lighter note, in terms of benefits, this was our first year with fall break. I hope that you all enjoyed those 2 days off as much as my family did. And I hope that you're already planning for those 3 days off during spring break and what you're going to do with those. But that is all that I have for my report. Are there any questions anyone has for me? Okay. Then we will move on to old business. There's none on the agenda. Is anyone aware of any old business that we've missed? Okay. Moving on to new business. Is there any new business that the senator would like to propose? Hearing none, we'll move into the public comment section of our meeting. So if anyone would like to take this time to make a public comment for the good of staff and staff senate. Okay. And then moving on to announcements, just at the bottom of our agenda, you'll see that our next staff senate executive committee meeting is November 8th. We have that via Zoom. And then our next staff senate meeting is December 7th in this room, DSU 28. And that'll be our last staff senate meeting of the semester. Are there any other announcements? With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.